Now, as the families of the victims of the Germanwings crash mourn the death of their loved ones, many are also looking for compensation for their loss. My next guest is a world-renowned expert in aviation law and crash compensation. He is already representing 3 of the families in the Malaysia Airlines MH17 crash. In fact, that plane was shot down over Ukraine last summer. He's now been hired by 4 of the families in this Germanwings disaster. Elmar Giemulla joins us now via Skype from Berlin. I wonder if you could first of all give us a sense of how the families are doing. And I realize at a certain level we can all imagine, but are you surprised to have heard from some of them so soon?
The families are, from the beginning, from the crash onwards, in a kind of nightmare. And the only thing they know is they never will wake up from this nightmare. This nightmare obviously has a number of phases, different phases, and they are just now going through one of the worst phases at all. But there will be even some other phases following that which are similarly worse. When the public attention goes down or goes back again and nobody cares for them, this is a very dangerous situation for them. So they must be treated, psychologically treated. They must be accompanied by friends, by other people. They must be taken care of them, because otherwise they die.
Obviously, there are very profound, very immediate impacts on some families. If the person who was on that plane was the primary income earner, for instance, that source of income is lost, funeral costs and the like. Has the airline stepped up to address any immediate costs already?
They are obliged, under European law, they are obliged to make an advance payment to cover exactly these immediate costs. They have not yet done so because it's too premature, but they have already announced this. And they have announced that they pay much more as advance payments than they are obliged under the law. They have announced to pay 50,000 euros per victim, which should be enough, the first step, to cover the immediate costs.
What kinds of damages do you believe some of the people that you're representing will be seeking in the long term?
The problem under German law is that it covers only the so-called financial losses, which is funeral costs, which are travel costs or other connected costs connected to the crash. It can also be maintenance, loss of maintenance, when there was a breadwinner on the plane and he has left children who are still claimed, who can claim for maintenance. Then the loss of maintenance, of course, must be compensated. But this is not very much. And if you look at the structure of the passengers, a large number of children or of younger people have been on board, and they are not obliged to pay maintenance to anybody. They are not married, they have no children, they are not obliged to pay maintenance to their parents. So, in other words, in these cases, and this is the majority of the cases on board, the airline is not obliged to pay more than these things as funeral costs and travel costs. And this is close to being macabre. The German law does not provide for any emotional loss. And this is exactly what I am claiming, and I hope Lufthansa will be open to this. The question is, what is the real consequence of such a tragedy? The consequence of a tragedy is not to pay for funeral costs. This is macabre. The consequence is that not only the physical lives of the passengers are destroyed, also the lives of the surviving families are completely destroyed. They never will get back to a normal situation. They have to work very hard to survive themselves. And this must be acknowledged, and it can only be acknowledged by compensation.
It also seems to have been acknowledged at this stage that the plane was brought down intentionally by the co-pilot, who we're now hearing had a history of some emotional troubles, that he may have torn up a doctor's note on the very day he was at the controls, that we're learning today that he had been treated for suicidal tendencies in the past. How will that factor into the case that you'll bring forward on behalf of surviving families?
It has absolutely no influence on the compensation or on the amounts to be paid, because all these structural things, the structure of international liability law in aviation is covered by the so-called Montreal Convention. And this is a so-called no-fault liability, which means that the passengers have only to prove what is already obvious, that there was a crash, that there was an accident, that people were on board who died. So this is basically, of course, good for passengers, because if they should have or were forced to prove the fault of the company, they never could, because they have no idea how aviation, the internal aviation structure runs. So
may I just jump in, Elmar, that am I to understand as well that if it was shown that the airline was negligent, that it had many reasons beyond what we know at this stage to have prevented that man from being at the controls, that there's still nothing more the families could do to get compensation as a result?
No. Our system, our legal system, does not know a kind of punitive damage as the American system knows. So the fault may be not existing. There may be a huge fault. It doesn't have any influence on the compensation or on the amounts to be paid.
That's interesting. Thank you for joining us to share this perspective with us. It's new to us in terms of how the legal system rolls out on this particular issue. Elmar Giemulla, thank you very much. He is a lawyer representing 4 of the families in the Germanwings disaster. He's joined us this afternoon via Skype from Berlin.